also victimizing poverty, because there is no such thing as a victimless crime.
Yeah. The leaders don't want to take your calls and meet with you, but if you had the opportunity to talk to them, what would you say?
Well, I think definitely Alvin Bragg. I would say to him, you know, how dare you? How dare you reduce the charges for murder down to assault with a shoe for an Afghanistan war retired veteran who fought for this country, who protected Americans. You disrespected him, all right? Not just him, but other mothers, other families who lost, you know, whose child was murdered. Assault with a shoe, and you'd sentence this woman to 1 year time served?
It's unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
Ma'am, thank you so much for joining me
welcome.
today. Condolences to you and your family. Thank you so much. So, in our last voter focus group before the midterms, I went down to Atlanta and had the pleasure of speaking to a diverse group of voters in Georgia. Although Democrats continue to campaign on issues aimed at firing up their base, the everyday people casting their ballots have much different priorities than those liberals who are trying to win their vote. Watch. Joshua, what's the number one issue facing you and your family?
Too many people here illegally. I see it on the road all the time, because I'm constantly on the road, and I'm constantly in a battle. Do I help these people? Because they have no way to support themselves, no place to live. They're either going to commit a crime to get money to survive, and they're all always on the corner with a handout, and it's a struggle to figure out what do I do.
And you say that as a Democrat.
Yeah.
Dom, what's the number one issue for you and your family?
Number one issue is inflation, because it is getting harder and harder to stay under budget and stay afloat. With the prices going up for like the past 7 or so months, it's like, you know, I keep going over budget, I have to pay with credit, and now I have to pay the credit back, and, you know, it's getting to be a mess.
Carolina.
I was a teacher for a really long time, so for me, it always comes back to education. And so I think that the state of our educational system and the state of the curriculum within that educational system is at the root of most of our problems.
This crime, this gun safety, and inflation with the rising cost of housing is really tough, especially coming on the heels of a pandemic.
Felicia, let's start with the governor's race.
Okay.
Who's best to serve the people of Georgia?
Brian Kemp is, and that's not a personal statement. It's actually what I've been hearing from some voters, especially Black male voters. Their number one topic is crime and the economy, and they liked the way that Brian Kemp wanted to come in and, you know, bring the state to help when Atlanta was just going crazy at that one particular time. They love the idea about, you know, a stronger economy, and they understand that a conservative government provides that kind of protection.
Governor Kemp kept us open during the whole pandemic, when I know full well that other people who may have won those races would have closed us down. For me, that's very important. My business is here, my employees are here. Shutting down a business is ridiculous, and Ron DeSantis, as great as he was not the first. Governor Kemp kept Georgia open first, and we all should owe him a debt of gratitude for that.
Rick, break it down for me.
I've already voted. I've voted for Governor Kemp, and I voted for Herschel. I think Brian Kemp, I agree with you. I think Brian Kemp is probably one of the most underrated governors in the country. DeSantis and Abbott, and they get more of the press, but like he said, you know, he opened us, he was later in closing us down, and he was the first one to open us up, and that made a huge difference.
What candidate do you feel best aligns with you and your value system?
So it's not that I think Kemp is fantastic, because I think he's probably a little less courageous than I would like in a governor. However, Stacey Abrams, I can't imagine that anything truly positive
can come from someone who thinks that a fetal heartbeat is an invention. Like, I have issue with that, especially when she's someone who also wants us to follow the science, right, when it comes to COVID, but not follow the science when it comes to pregnancy. You can't, it's not an if or. If it's science, and if it's not, it's not.
The way that Georgia handled that pandemic could have been done better, especially in the city of Atlanta. Georgia was one of the last to shut down. And because of that, we had an increase of the death rate. You know, that wasn't a wise choice. We were one of the first to open back up. We were still in the midst of a pandemic, losing people. I see Twitter posts with people grieving, still burying their loved ones from the pandemic. People were still catching it. That was so irresponsible as a leader. We could have waited.
Dom, what do you think about this governor race and the Senate race?
The governor race, well, I'm leaning towards Kemp, but if he does get reelected, he needs to do more about crime. He's already a Republican governor, and they're supposed to be tough on crime. I think, yeah, definitely more needs to be done there.
And as it relates to the Senate race, what are your views on those two candidates, Walker and Warnock?
It's separate. I like Herschel Walker. He is a winner. He's been successful. He knows how to work. I think he'll do the job for us. I think we need to give him time. He's not a politician, but that's what I like about him too.
You guys are showing up to vote in record numbers. But there was an entire campaign that said there was a concerted effort to suppress the vote, that it was Jim Crow 2.0. I mean, businesses lost money because of the All-Star game. And now we're seeing record turnout in you guys' race.
We're not having trouble voting in Georgia right now. The curve of how many people voted this time around early voting as compared to the last two midterm elections is off the charts. The diagram goes up like a balloon.
Do you think they went wrong by saying, this is back to the Jim Crow era of things? Because when you ask black people, we know what that feels like in our guts.
Yes.
But do you think they overplayed
that
the
card?
politics, that card?
No, I don't think they
so?
overplayed that card. The fact that they purposely removed ballot boxes to suppress votes and to have all these different stipulations and requirements when it comes to the vote that were never there feels like suppression.
Well, let me give Stacey Abrams some credit here. This woman practically registered 1 million new voters, a couple years ago. Like, that is mind-blowing to me. And I feel like she has that power, that flex to really mobilize the people to say, hey, voting is really important. But that mobilization should not come with fear. It should not include a fear tactic, something as vile and historically traumatizing as Jim Crow. Like, when I think Jim Crow as a Californian, I'm thinking like lynchings and, like brutal stuff. And so you're telling me that I'm coming from California to Georgia and I'm gonna deal with Jim Crow 2.0? Oh no, my daughter, we need to go back to California, So the fear was just really, it was inappropriate.
More with the Georgia folks later, but up next, Democrats are on the verge of losing a long-held seat in the House to a 25-year-old rising Republican star. That young challenger joins us next on Cross Country. Don't go anywhere.
In 3 days, it's the biggest night in politics, and the 2022 midterms live on Fox News. With the balance of power on the line, we take you inside the states that everyone will be watching and break down the biggest races in America. With the country's key issues at stake, our team has up-to-the-minute results and analysis from across the nation and an unmatched multi-platform experience, so you're always in the know.
This one night could change the course of history.
In 3 days, it's Democracy 2022 on Fox News. Your freedom, your vote.
Who are you? I'm you, from the future. What do you want? I want to tell you about Dave. Dave has your future money. Spend it on whatever you need. With extra cash from Dave, you can get up to $500 instantly with no interest and no credit check. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC.
Your home is a one-of-a-kind piece of art, a palette of design elements reflecting your personal aesthetic and functional needs. For over 20 years, All Natural Stone's exclusive collection